get this separate, sit down, so I think it's orientated it for the, as if I'm using a mobile phone. Just let me know if the audio works, because the iPad's a bit odd. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But either time, it doesn't tell me. I thought I'd do a live one this week, and maybe I'll do these more regular on a weekend when I've got time. Depending on the stuff to talk about. For me, it's been an interesting couple of weeks with some of the stuff that's been going on, because obviously the Trump election's been a big shift. I've got to look at how the left has sort of shifted. It does show how much manipulation is going on, though, because it wasn't a case of people just accepted a loss or just complained about it and then went on to daily lives that like how they expect everyone else to do it. It was more a case of a lot of them have just disappeared. I think a lot of them must have had funding through government initiatives. That's the polite way of saying it. Government propaganda with people that were on the Democratic side, which may have been cut off. It's the same as when you hear about the news network suddenly cutting lots of staff because they're now in the middle of a pivotal shift. Now, what I want to say on this, though, it's also interesting with the Tyson fight, if you could call it a fight. I've got to admit, I was thinking about this yesterday because he wasn't fighting. I mean, he just didn't seem to be. When you compare him with when he was training, he seemed to be moving as if he was just shuffling around. When in the training, he seemed about 10 times faster. So I think he just took the money. But then again, I sit there and think, well, I don't know how much Tyson's got financially. I know he took a lot of hits over the years with the various things he got up to. So this may have been his final payoff. So do I think it's bad that he took the money if that's what happened and it looked like it did? No. It was actually nice to watch something on Netflix and not have to work out who's the gay person. Although we did get the DEI because obviously they put the women's boxing on, but it does look like Netflix is pivoting because it does look like they're starting to move on to the sports side, which I get because I can't see them maintaining their stance on the way they manipulate and destroy most things they produce. Because, like I said, you've always got to work out who's the gay person, who's the lesbian, there's always something hidden in there, which is intentional on the political agenda. Sports, it becomes a little bit more difficult because you're actually more focused on the sports. Because bizarrely there, not everybody gets a golden ticket, not everybody gets a medal, not everybody gets a certificate. It's the person who wins or the team that wins that gets it. So it'll be interesting how that pivots, because we suddenly see a lot of women's football. I'm not paying for that. I've got to admit, I'm not. And it's not because I'm sexist. It's not because issues around that. I just don't find it interesting. They don't, it's the same with the basketball. They don't seem to have the same level of athletic ability, and I'm not knocking women for that because there's a reason we're built differently. Between a male and female, bizarrely, we are talking two genders now. I mean, I've got to admit, I do expect you'll see a lot of that stuff coming out of America now, because I get Trump's version. He's running it like a business now, so he'll just keep cutting the government money off until they agree with the changes he needs to make. Already seen that with, what's her name, Pelosi, and when they were talking about some of the shifts that they want to do, and he just threatened to shut the government down if they don't do it. They don't like it, because what I find funny with these people is they talk about being democratic, being sort of working together, but it only works if it suits their agenda. So I think there's going to be some major shifts there, as Trump actually starts to prove that his stuff works. The reason I'm bringing up Trump, JFK, etc., is because I do actually think they're going to make some pivotal positive changes. When you've got JFK looking at the food and the big pharma, I believe he's already hit their stock prices because they already know some waves of impacts when he starts looking at the, what's his name, from Microsoft, the Bill Gates and the vaccine stuff, because obviously there'll be government money going on these initiatives, should we call it. Also, how things are forced as a vaccine, and so there's going to be lots of stuff on that. And the food stuff I get as well, because one of my things, instead of having a sugar tax that people have to pay for the products they buy, I think companies should be fined from how far they've moved away from their original recipes. Because if you look at cereals, how much sugar has been progressively added to cereals. So if you look at cornflakes, Rice Krispies, Sugar Puffs, whatever it is, and see how much the sugar content's increased over the years, because for me, that just feels like a dealer getting people to get addicted to his product, which is obviously unethical, obviously financially motivated, but even worse when people start talking about a lot of people being obese, and a lot of it is because of stuff in their food. I think it was Trump, or definitely seen a quote with Trump on it that said, "You never see a thin person drinking Diet Cola," which I think that sums it up. In reality, is you swap sugar with chemical. In chemicals, they don't. A lot of them won't break down in the body easily. It's the same as when you look at even a loaf of bread. When you're just really wanting the basics, which I think are 3 or 5 products. I think might only be 3. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. It definitely won't be more than 5. But then you look at the back of a packet of bread from a major producer. I'm not even going to call them bakeries because that's insulting to real bakers. But you'll find like 34 different things in there. You go, hang on, you've got preservatives, colorants, additives, flavorings, all these things that wouldn't have normally been in your food chain. And to be fair, I think this is where a lot of people have become overweight. It's not because they're eating more, it's not because they're getting told to eat the right food, but at the same time, a lot of this stuff is not obvious what's been going on. And this is why I'm quite keen on how JFK approaches that, because that could have an impact to a lot of people. Because let's face it, if it gets proven in America, it's going to be very difficult for people to do and not make the changes in the UK, because I find the UK follows the US with like a 5-year trend. So if it's going on in the US, doesn't matter if it's good or bad, gang violence, diet pills, whatever, UK over 5 years sort of seems to fall into the same path. It's like the immigration stuff. I mean, I think now that the US is getting his game sorted for the immigration thing, and let me be fair on that. Illegals, let's not call it immigration. Illegals, people that have no right to be in the US at all. Now it's getting its game together on that. I think you'll see a shift on there. You'll suddenly see the mass deportations of people that have got no reason or right to be in the US. I think some people must wonder why they ended up in the US. Because you look at the people eating the cats, eating the dogs, a lot of those Haitians that end up dumped in these locations that they wouldn't have even thought about living in, they must be wondering why they're there. because it's obviously not the American dream. And it also makes the same from the UK side when we get a lot of violence relating to people from these, let's just call them boats. So we're not saying illegals, we're not saying unregistered individuals or anything else. People that have arrived on the boats, the small boats that didn't need a passport to enter the UK waters. A lot of these must think the streets are paved with gold, and then to be shoved into a hotel, given a little bit of pocket money, not allowed to work, etc. They must be thinking, this isn't one much of a step up from prison. Now, don't get me wrong, I fully understand it's expensive, but from somebody who's worked away a lot and spent a lot of time in hotels, it's not an easy life. No, don't get me wrong, as a taxpayer, I don't even know why we're funding it. And I definitely wouldn't call the guys refugees. It just seems wrong, because the majority of them are not refugees. When you intentionally destroy all your documents, you're hiding something, you're deceptive, you've arrived illegal, you're illegal, that's it. If you're legal, there is other ways of doing it. And I get they may not have the right requirements, because let's face it, a lot of these guys are probably uneducated, a lot of them are probably wanted for crimes in their own countries. A lot of these guys aren't going to have a lot of capabilities and abilities to offer the nations that they're going to. But you'll get the false agenda that say they're doctors, they're engineers, they're surgeons, they're dentists, they're teachers. All this utter garbage. Yet they just seem to be, from what I see, lucky if they're an Uber driver, or well, I see a lot of them around London, delivery drivers, and you can't tell me there ain't gangs operating somewhere, because who's signing up for all those scooters? Because in the UK you've got to have a driving license. Well, if these guys haven't even got their paperwork, have they got a driving license? There must be a lot of illegal delivery drivers in the UK. I mean, isn't it weird how we went from a normal society to having this like third class of delivery drivers? And I will call it third class because we look at, in the Philippines, you got your tricycle drivers, your habal drivers, they're not earning good money. So they're not, so they're not rich, they're not middle class. Well, maybe before, yeah, they're probably barely working class, because although it's minimum wage, like I says, a lot of these guys should be working. So how are they getting around the system? And I doubt most of them could be licensed, because if they've got no paperwork, how have they got a driving license? How's the scooters insured? How's this? See what I'm saying? There's very easy ways where you can apply pressure if you want to start getting people to leave as well, because you just target what they're doing. If it's illegal, crush their bikes, crush their scooters, do stuff to make the changes. But it is almost like they're creating another classification in society, which bizarrely is very similar to the third world, where you've got people that can't afford housing, can't get a job, or haven't got the skills, haven't got the capabilities. So we're starting to create these people that will deliver things to your door. I mean, it's not just in the UK either. I mean, in Spain, I find a lot of the taxi drivers, when I was in Barcelona and Madrid, they're just following the sat navs, because the one, I'll probably say 1 in 8 was Spanish. But you're then wondering, that guy driving, is he even licensed to drive that car? Sounds mad, but I'll give you another example. I remember my ex-girlfriend years ago was saying to me, when she was still at school, we weren't dating when she was at school, by the way. She got a taxi home with her mother, I think it was, and she was saying the guy driving the taxi was her classmate from school. Now, he's still in secondary school. He is, he's a Muslim fella, but he was driving his dad's taxi. And this is how you're trying to compete with people which will have a lot of illegal working going on. So, for example, how can a taxi be on the road 24 hours a day? Because you may have one legal person and 2 or 3 illegal. Now, it doesn't mean they're illegal in the country, but they'll illegally be operating that taxi in the sense of uninsured, unlicensed, too young to drive. But these practices are often things we're importing as well, because I've got to admit, I've seen stuff where you see certain parts of British society will do whatever they can to avoid paying anything, even a TV license, which I'm not a fan of TV license anyway, but I remember when I first left school, I had a job at Curry's, which is like a electrical store. And when you buy a TV, you had to give your address, which meant they know there's a TV in the house. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't watch BBC. A, there's nothing I actually want to watch on there, but B, I would find it unethical. When you look at the Jimmy Saviles, you look at your, what's his name? Tommy Kangaroo Down Sport, Rolf Harris, and lots and lots of other people. Philip Schofield being one of the latest groomers, allegedly. But you look at the way it seems to be encouraged in that environment. I don't know how or why, but then they have things like the children's charity stuff. These guys should be near kids. If you can't make your business safe for children, why are you promoting that you can be trusted when you've had the worst paedophile and child abuser, rapist probably on the planet that people are aware of? And then there seems to be connections on how that has been carried on for a long period of time. And then you see how even the investigation seems to like go on a mini witch hunt and then die down, because it was like as soon as it drops out the media, back to normal. So I've got to admit, I can't watch the BBC. I'm certainly not paying for it. I just think they're unethical in every direction. Yeah, so I mean, for me, I think scrapping the BBC's licence fee would be a benefit to British society and the world as a whole. But yeah, it's interesting, like I says, because Trump's made a shift. Him moving into the White House is going to have a lot of political impacts in a positive way. I look at it from the bigger bit, because I'm not really too fussed on the small stuff, because I'm looking at it. We've had an erosion of society going on for a long period of time. So for me, my biggest concerns are like the next generations. I look at the Tyson fight, and I just look at that other guy. See, I don't even remember his name. That's how. I mean, for me, all that Tyson fight seemed to be was Netflix to promote. It seems to be pivoting into sports. Bit of showboat. Well, it wasn't even showboating. It wasn't even good acting. It was just, yeah. Was it Jake Paul? There you go. I've remembered his name now. He just seemed to. It was like one of those school fights, where you got a lanky kid trying to fight a kid that's well built, and they just jump around. The one guy's jumping around, not really doing much, but just swinging around and just out of reach. And the other guy sort of stood there going, "What are you doing? You know, are we fighting or dancing?" You know, it just seemed like one of those. It just seemed, um, yeah, it just seemed completely pointless. But I'm glad Toddson made about, what, $20 million. Because to be fair, I think he had a hard time. I know he's had a lot of problems over the years, but I think he got used and abused. So if he can cash out and retire, good. That's so see the positive in things. It's it's just like good, yeah. Thankfully, he's done okay out of it. You know, I'd have preferred him to knock Jake Paul out. I would have loved that, but it did. It just seemed like he was just told, just dance around, just play, you know, and just take the money. Absolutely pointless, but fight. But if it pays him out, good. Yeah. I mean, he's one guy I think's been humbled over the years with the stuff that's happened to him, and he can look in the mirror and he can see where he was and where he is and what he doesn't want to become again. So he's proactively on the right path. So for me, I'm not really fussed about taking the money because in my view, he took the money. It's more about the fact that he actually has done something that he can retire on now. I mean, I'm sure he wasn't broke, but it wasn't a fight, that was for sure. But I do think having the setup that they've now got in America, we're going to see some ripple effects. Because what you're going to have in Europe, you've already seen it with Starmer. Starmer seems to be on the back foot now, because especially after allegedly sending, what was it, 100 aides from the Labour Party and political people for the Kamala Harris lot. He's not done himself any favours. David Lammy's previous comments about Trump. But I take the opinion from Trump. I get some of the stuff. Now, when they were rattling about Trump before he was running for an election, if you haven't seen it, look back at the stuff before he was running for election. They were just mocking him at a dinner. And you could see he was not having it. He didn't like it. It was almost like he would run for president just because these people were so confident, arrogant, and rude that it needed to be done to put them in their place. And then you look at it now. I think Obama embarrassed himself during the election as well, because he showed his true colours. Because a lot of people did think he was better than that, but another one that pays his paymasters. It doesn't matter though. Trump won. Looking forward to JFK's work. Looking forward to Elon Musk's work, because I can see Elon Musk reducing the government workforce, probably about the bits he's dealing with, probably about 40%. It's difficult to reduce it more than that because there is a lot of bureaucracy in there. But you've also got to understand a lot of people are not computer literate and stuff. So a lot of the stuff does end up having to stay simplified, you know, with paperwork, etc. Because you've got to take into account a lot of people don't know how to use a computer. Or they haven't got access to it, especially with dealing with people on benefits, got mental health issues, drug issues, other things that are occupying their lives. It's very difficult for them to use technology. Not everybody, but you don't want anybody slipping through the system either, because, you know, if they need the support and need the help, then they shouldn't be singled out simply because they're not computer literate. So I do get you can reduce some, but at the same time you need to take it from both sides. RFK had an insect eating his insect brain. Well, we'll see. Like I said, I mean, it's a bit like when when I seen Boris get in the UK, somebody asked me what I thought of Boris, and the simple answer was give him 6 months. Because once you start seeing the changes, that's when you can make a decision on where things are going. So I do think you're going to see some positive changes on that side simply because the guy's been looking at it for years. It's an area he's focused on. I think Trump's done the smart thing of dropping these other people into these roles that he knows will be able to make the changes. The other thing is it sets up a legacy for when Trump's not president anymore, because you may find that other people start dropping in over time that may end up getting set up for the presidential race later. So I do think having Elon Musk looking at how to improve processes, improving how a lot of the government stuff functions, as well as looking into possibly things like the Epstein files. And there ain't no party like a P. Diddy party. You may end up seeing a lot more transparency, but at the same time, this is government. So assuming everything's going to be one way is delusional. Because let's face it, I've never was it an honest politician. The only honest politician's a dead politician. You know, well, I don't mean that in an assassination way. I mean it's they stop talking. So you've got to take it from that point of view. I do look at JD Vance. I do look at all of his picking so far. I do think he's picking the right people. And I watched the bit where he was talking about when he won the election last time, and he was relying on other people giving him advice because he'd never done it before, didn't really know his picks, didn't really, and I think that hampered him. This time he seems to have got a nice broad selection of people, and a lot of them didn't seem to like him in the first instance. Which remind me of Churchill, because Churchill put one of his not allies, what do you call it? One of the people that disliked him the most, he put in his cabinet. Because the thing is, with the UK, you need the power of the vote. So if you've got the people that dislike you in there, in your cabinet, and you're talking to them directly, you're already setting yourself up in a bit of a positive way. So I've got to admit, I do like that approach. I've had to charge me tablet, so it's gone a little bit higher. But yeah, moving on from that, I do think it's going to have a ripple effect for the UK. I do think what we'll see in the UK is, well, for a start, I don't think they've got the budgets for what they were thinking they were going to do, this Labour government. I think what's going to happen is they're going to try and do some stuff, and a lot of it's going to backfire. I mean, they're all about now with that financial minister, was it Rachel Reeves, lying on her CV allegedly. I'm not being funny, but I'm not too particularly bothered by the fact that she's not that financially savvy, because which politicians are? Most of them don't seem to have had any jobs. Most of them, I would have to say, are underachievers. They often are self-focused and self-serving, which means this is why we end up with the governments we have. Which gets back to the Trump piece. When you look at a lot of the people he's put in his cabinet, they're people that run businesses and stuff. So their mindset and abilities will be far superior to a lot of the other people. Because if you know politicians, one of the first things I would say about a politician is, what's in it for me? Seems to be the standard approach. Like the net zero stuff with Ed Miliband. I think his whole thing is, why has he gone offshore? Is it because he'll be working with countries that money can be siphoned off? and just disappear into projects that never get built, but the cash is gone. Because these things are repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. You know, if you look at the way China moved into Africa, it moved over, I think, 1 million Chinese into Africa to run the stuff because they know it's heavy with corruption. They know there's problems all over it. So although they're taking cobalt and God knows what out the country, they're also putting in city infrastructure and stuff. They're developing in a way where they're taking and giving at the same time. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's long-term African benefit. I think it's China's benefit to itself. But if you can create cities, infrastructure, developments, and you're a major shareholder, for example, in whether it's construction, whether it's being a landlord, whether it's land ownership, whether it's internet, telephone, tech, wherever it is, and you're controlling the government because you're pumping the cash in and the technology, you're on a win-win. But I don't see that coming out of the UK. most of the stuff that comes out of the UK just seems to be money that disappears. Unfortunately, we don't seem to do any projects that I can think of that are beneficial long term. If you look at a lot of the NGO projects, a lot of the NGO stuff is about money, and we often push it down to singular corruption. But this is a thing with, what's it, the Bill Gates Foundation or whatever charity organizations, NGOs, whatever. A lot of it is not about what they're doing, it's what they're selling. But the thing with the net zero one, for me, it just confuses me why we'd want to invest in other people's countries in infrastructure. For me, the investment should be in British technology. Let's face it, if you developed a hydrogen system for cars, for power generation, for making the most advanced solar tech, you know, making the best turbines on the planet, wave technique, you could focus in different ways on bringing the cost down or the quality up or both. Why would you sell it out? For me, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, it's British tech, it should be invested in the UK. And if you become a producer, if you're producing the best kit, people will buy it. It's all about return on investment. If we're doing projects where we're just going to give money away, oh yeah, we built 50 whatever in it, but we used British technology, but we gave them the money to buy it from us. It doesn't make any sense. The UK is not in a good enough position to be wasting money. Its economy is completely foobar. I mean, even basic stuff like potholes, which I'm not going to get into, but potholes are a big issue in the UK that I find myself destroy one of the tyres on my car. Because if you can't keep your basic infrastructure functioning, the country is failing. The UK is becoming a third world country. Now, I've got to admit, I'm not a fan of that. I know I gripe about the UK, but it's more a case of I look at where it was and where it is now. It's a bit embarrassing. Flooding the country with people that nobody asked for, didn't invite, have already passed through safe countries, no reason to be in the UK, and then they're just there. It's not a case, oh, well, it takes 2 years to process, it takes this, it takes that, But what are they there for? You know, you get people talking about, well, there's a lot of ISIS, you got a lot of this, you know, you take it from different perspectives. I look at the fact is very simple, these guys will never pay enough into the system for the amount they will take out. They will not assimilate. It's just a true fact. I think it's only about 5% have actually paid more in than they've taken out. I'm not being funny. Would you like giving 95% of your wages to somebody else? Because let's face it, we're taxed to death in the UK, and for what? You go on a bus, there's always a crazy person on the bus. The food products are not very good these days. Restaurants are expensive. Everything's going delivery through Amazon and whatever, so the high streets ain't in a good shape. Now the government's trying to force you to buy electric cars through taxation. The place isn't in a good space. But this is why I look at the Trump stuff and think, but it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. I do think there will be a ripple effect across the whole of Europe over time. Obviously, you've got Hungary, Netherlands, and other places. I mean, even France is on that verge of change. And they keep going far right, far right, far right. Most of those people are not far right at all. What they're actually trying to do is pivot into the middle. I mean, my view is that a country acting in the benefit of its nation and its people should be a founding factor. It should be a basic. If you're bringing in things that damage the country and have no long-term vision, that's madness. Why would you do it? When I look at the stuff I used to deal with, because I used to deal with social housing a long time ago. I used to be the guy that would go around, and you know when people put in, my tap's broken, I need a new kitchen, or the fence is falling at the back of the house, my windows are too cold, all this sort of stuff. I was the guy that went out and would survey the buildings and have a look at them and try and understand what the problem is. I mean, I remember one house was always complaining about damp, but as soon as the doors open, you could smell the weed because they're growing weed in there, so the heating's always on, so that's where the damp's coming from. And they've got all fertilizers, and God knows what going on there. It's an illegal farm. But the reality is, a lot of those people are already in the UK and struggling to get by. Don't get me wrong, a lot of these people will never work. And I look at it from a bigger perspective, on the sense of the world has moved past them. Because it sounds very arrogant, but it's not. It's because I've worked with a few people that they ain't got a hope in hell of becoming computer literate. They just can't do it. And at the same time, the jobs where they pull a handle like this all day or press a button, they're all gone. The rise of automation has removed them. But they can't keep up. These aren't people that sit and can grasp doing a college course or something like that. They don't have that ability. And you know, people say, well, you can always find a job. A lot of these jobs that are available to them won't pay enough to make it worth their while. There are also a lot of the demeaning jobs that they wouldn't want to do. Because I'm not being funny. If you were a guy that worked in a factory for 20 years, not really computer literate, you may have, I don't know, learning disabilities, or it could be, you know, things like dyslexia, or a complete lack of interest. Because a few of my friends, it's not that they're stupid or anything else, they just don't want to learn anything anymore, because they've hit that point where they just want to turn up, do the job and go home, because the jobs that they're capable of doing, they don't want to waste their time learning anything new. They just don't. They just see work as paying the bills and that's it. Now, you may think, well, they must do this, they must do that, but they don't have the ability. They've got nothing driving them for that ability. So we've already got a lot of these people that exist in the UK, millions of them, not thousands, millions of people that may not be able to do a job. There may be a risk to others. They may be disabled. They may have other issues going on, mental health issues, etc. And I've got to admit, I don't really want them in the workplace. I want people in the workplace that want to be there. So why would we bring in millions of other people that often think the system's free? They've been told the system's free. They want to change the system to suit them. Simply not needed. It's like this obsession that we need more people for an aging population. Well, let me think about this logically. If you have an aging population and their health begins to fail, the population will decline, surely. In history, populations have gone up and down. We've had the Great Plague of Europe, which I think wiped out 2/3 of the population of Europe. Did Europe fail? Or is it still there now? Same as Spain. You go out in the middle of nowhere, up in the mountains or whatever, there's entire villages that have disappeared. Has the world ended? No. People just don't live there anymore. People move to the cities, the places that are out in the boondocks. Nobody lives there. The world didn't stop. This whole obsession of we need all these people to look after these people that then age and then need looking after doesn't make any sense. It's just nonsense. Now, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean everything's a solution. It doesn't mean everything's a problem. It's just that is definitely not the answer. Because for a start, that just grows your population in a direction where I don't think it needs to go. I was listening to somebody recently who was on about the care workers and care homes, where they always used to be like a young girl, from the UK, and now it's often people from Africa and stuff that are in those jobs. Why? If you've got people at home that are capable of doing those jobs, which there is, because these are basic jobs, I don't understand why we're importing people for our basic jobs when we have millions of people that could do some of those jobs. And like I said, I agree a lot of people wouldn't want to do those jobs, but it doesn't mean there isn't people that would do those jobs. In the same way, you find employing people as teaching assistants rather than employing teachers is a cost-saving initiative in many cases. GPs are having the same as doctors. There's something weird going on with GPs because they're using a lot of people like when you phone in, what seems to be the problem, blah, blah, phone advisors. And then you've got, I think was it 2,300 GPs that can't find work in the UK? We don't even hear about these people, but we're being told there's a lack of doctors. It's all a bit skewed, and the facts that we see are often not correct. Because when you look into the bigger stuff and go, well, hang on, what's the output of that? If we bring in people from Africa, Asia, whatever, to take over these jobs, why are we doing it, and what's the benefit to the nation? Well, it's a visa thing because these people are cheaper than British people, but hang on a minute, they're cheaper than British people. So am I paying British people unemployment benefit, housing benefit, to sit at home and then employing somebody to work as a caregiver in the UK? How can that be cheaper? It sounds like it's just wooden money being moved around, and in fact it's costing more than it should, because part of life is actually having self-worth and self-achievement. If you're removing that by the Great Replacement, you've got an undertone and a problem that's developing. And this gets back to the Trump stuff. This is why I think that shift where people are, I've got to say, I've got to use the white replacement because I see it too much in corporate world. It's not healthy. If people are getting employed over you simply because of their skin color, being a woman over a man, etc., that's not healthy, because you're not picking the best. You're just picking, well, DEI, ticking the box. And as you've seen with Disney, which has lost what, 200 billion in a year in its share values, you may see that taken over by Musk. And you know what? To fix Disney is not going to be that difficult, because you just scrap the DEI. Simple as that. You just go back to what it should have been doing, which is just producing things like Winnie the Pooh and all the other traditional stuff that was stolen from the Europe and, well, even Africa, Lion King, stealing people's stories, allegedly, because the Disney versions of folk stories, but they try and make them copyright, I've got to admit. But the fact is, a lot of this stuff is not hard to fix, and this is why I'm saying it doesn't matter how you look at it. There's a lot of stuff that's been done to the West and encouraged by people in the West, Democrats or socialists or communists or Marxists, that has eroded the Western society. But it doesn't mean it can't be fixed. You will see how quickly, I suspect we'll see how quickly, with Trump's appointments, how much that shifts in the US. And if it works right, I think that is going to have a positive ripple effect across parts of Europe and stuff, because it gives people hope of change. Now, part of this for me is I look at the next generations, and if you're telling white males or just, well, British males or American males that they're not important because women are more important or black people are more important, that's just prejudiced, racist, sexist, all the stuff they tell us we are, just being used in reverse. But they want to sit there and talk as if they're better than everybody else. Got some interesting times ahead. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. But I've got to admit, I'm interested to see how the UK plays out now, because I do think the Trump elections had a small effect. It's given some people hope. I think the UK's problem is it's looking for a leader. It currently doesn't have one. I think Farage is too much of a chameleon for a lot of people, and I can't see anybody else there, and that's the problem with the UK, because it needs good leadership, which can get followed by the masses, which can also bring enough people to control a parliament, because obviously Trump has a different control in the US to what the UK will have, because quite simply, the UK, for me, the parliament is very stagnant. It's very stagnant. It's very hard to shift. That's why people complain, whether it's Conservative or Labour, they're the same. Well, it's because of the way the system is. Because most of these people are career politicians. They're not decision makers. They're not people who stick their heads out. The reality is, if you can stay in the background and just take your money, you're doing okay as a politician. The reality is, they're not the best and the brightest. A lot of these people have never had a job in their life. Being a politician is their job, and that's the problem. But I can't see a major shift there. Where I can see a shift, though, is Germany. I can see a shift in France coming. France seems to be starting to argue with itself now, because obviously they had this allegiance and alliance with each other to win the election, and now it's starting to fracture a bit. So I do expect you're going to see some shifts there. They're having a lot of pro-Palestine marches and stuff like that. But I'm finding the media suppressed. I don't know if you guys are, because I'm finding the media's a lot more suppressed lately. And I also find it since Trump got voted in, the media streams just seem to have dropped off completely. The amount of negative left-wing stuff that was out there just seems to have gone, woo. You know, it seems to have dropped out, and I assume with a lot of the funding, as Trump comes in, a lot of these groups may have lost government money. So, because let's face it, even if they weren't proactively doing something directly, they may be doing something indirectly. You know, for example, I don't know, a green energy initiative. This is just off. So I send somebody $6 million a year to do a green initiative on something, but in reality, don't need anything fed back to me. Not really interested because they're actually a political arm for Twitter or whatever else they're really doing. I wouldn't be surprised if the new government uncovers a lot of that stuff. It's like the UK, I believe Hope Not Hate is covered by taxpayers' money, which is a little bit concerning. But hey ho. Anyway, I just thought I'd do some politics stuff today, simply because it's a nice Sunday. I'm going to have another coffee. If the winds drop, it's going to take the drone out for a bit. But hope you guys have all had a good weekend. And I hope some sanity is returning, because I've got to admit, the way stuff's gone lately with the UK and US, the media's been pumped with it. A lot of negative fighting stuff. Because what I always find peculiar, I think this is one of the things with Trump. Trump focused on the positive stuff. It's the same as all the stuff about the assassination attempts. He is not focused on people trying to assassinate him. He's left that for other people to deal with. He's just focused on, yeah, the security were good, blah, blah, and moves on. He's got other people doing the bad stuff in the background, dealing with it. With the UK, it's mudslinging. You listen to them in Parliament, it's like 5-year-olds just slating each other. And the stuff that's coming out recently, for me, just shows how corrupt, how bad the system is, because these people do what they want and get away with it. But I was also thinking about this whole like lefties losing it type stuff that comes out I think it's Sky Australia, because all these people are relying on one thing: having a voice. You remove the voice, they've got nothing. Starmer, for example, I won't listen to a word that guy says. I mean, I've got to admit, even if I was walking past him on the street, I'd blank him. He's not a good person on any level. And I think that's the bit that we need to recognise, is a lot of these people we don't need to listen to. They're problematic at best, they're liars at worst. We're better than that. So yeah, I think that's pretty much me for today, unless anybody's got any questions. I know it's a bit of a well, it's not even a whiny one, it's just more of an update today, you know, because it's just the stuff that's going on around us. I do think we're in a better spot. I do think there's, you know, life is going to get better over time. So I think we're just going to wait. I think the US is going to lead stuff. I think is, you know, people have talked about, oh, sorry, I didn't see, all the comments didn't show up. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Morning to you too. Art Park and going, do you call nominating Matt Gatsby someone who trafficked a minor across state lines for sex and paid money for same to the minor a good pick? Well, I'd have to look into whether it's facts or not, because there's been so many lies in the media. I'd have to actually look at whether it was actually true or not. So how can you compare Churchill to the lying grifter? You're obviously on the left side. How about clear losing an election and then lying about it, engaging in a seductive criminal attack on a nation? Yeah, you're a bit too left for me, because I think you need to look at it from both sides, which also includes looking at not just the media stuff, but all the stuff on the legality side. So, because what you've got to understand is, it sounds like you've been getting your media from one side. So yeah, you obviously got a problem with him. You're obviously way on the left for me. My view is, if he was so corrupt, so this, so that, A, how did he win the presidential election? B, how did he manage to avoid jail? There's nothing there that hasn't come out that he's actually not disputed and actually come out with facts, whether you like it or not. And then when you look at the realities of how corrupt a lot of the democratic people have been, allegedly. That's the weird thing. Democratic's such a bad word for a lot of these people, because they're not democratic, they're not liberal, they're not progressive. Oh God, you need to get out more. Yeah. It's interesting how you can take the little snippets that the media have fed you instead of actually looking at the full context of everything that's said. Johnny Fanta, is the sports centre near you open this month? I think so, because I mean it's just behind us, and it is pretty much nearly finished. I was tempted to take the drone up there, because it's literally just there. I've got one of the little Neo drones, so it's not too much of a obstructive one. Although to be fair, you still got your licenses. I think you got to register it still in Spain. In the UK, it's not such a big thing. I think it's still classified as a toy, due to its size and weight load. But Spain's a bit more on the ball. I think they like giving you fines. So that's yeah. So I might see what I do with that. I might speak to the mayor as well, because let's face it, the good thing about the mayor here for Torrevieja is you can actually message him on Twitter. Sorry, not Twitter, Instagram, and he'll actually reply to you and come back with stuff, because he talks about graffiti and other issues in the town. Because we do suffer, well, a lot of it's billboard stuff, where people come in and put posters up on private properties. But one of the problems you've got is it's not the local government's property, so they can't sort of intervene in that side, but you can report it, because obviously it's graffiti, so it's more of a police matter, but each individual property would then have to get involved in it. Yeah, but yeah, that's open soon. I'm interested to see what they're going to use it for, because it does seem to have a lot of seating from what I can see. So it'll be interesting to see how much it gets utilised, because obviously we got the Torrevieja town that's not far from us, which has got a lot of sports facilities, decent swimming pool. They have like karate events there. They have what do they call it? We've had the five-side football, from all over Europe. We've had, what else we had up there? Oh, we've had basketball tournaments, not just for Spain, but from all over Europe. There's been some big events there. Yeah, it's interesting it'll be interesting to see what the utilisation is, because it's quite a small building, but it seems to have a lot of seating. So let's see. The other thing is, opposite, there's a bit of land that's been fenced off. I'm wondering if they're going to put a multi-storey car park in there, because originally part of the planning there was a multi-storey car park. So I wouldn't be surprised if they open this and then suddenly the next thing is the development of the car park. And I think they may do it in stages, because behind these apartments at the back here, some of them have now got the side of the sports centre outside their balconies. If they put the multi-storey behind the garage, there's a lot of houses that are going to suddenly have a wall of a multi-storey car park going up the outside of their houses to their roof decks and whatever, where now currently they could go and sit up there, have breakfast, and get a view of the nature park, which is over the back. So I think it may be done in stages, to avoid the disruption of people protesting. Good old town planning. It's always good at doing its initiatives and working out how to get things round. And then when you're trying to do something like, I don't know, put a shed up or something, is a major issue. They won't approve that. But building a sports complex outside multiple people's balconies, not a problem. But I've got to admit, the development there has been on the cards for years. There's also supposed to be a development piece for a jetty and a small harbour area. I don't know if that'll ever get off the ground because the water's quite shallow, and also at the far end, I believe the original jetty was an old Roman one, so maybe a case of there's issues around the historical aspects, because there may be fines, you know, of stuff that's still in there. But for me, I like the fact that La Mata's developing, but it can't develop too far, because we've got sand dunes where there's a lot of fauna and stuff that's protected, so they can't develop too much there. Obviously the beach there, nature park at the back, sand dunes to the left, sand dunes to the right. There's not a lot of space to develop it much further. This is why you see a bit further down, they knock houses down and they built more modern houses. But at the same time, I still look at that and think the house doesn't, well, the square meterage is not increased over the old house. So if the house was 150 square meters, it's still 150 square meters. Renewing it, the price of the house has probably gone up from 200,000 to 600,000, 700,000. But the actual development is not that big. But on top of that, I don't think the technology and infrastructure is much better, because you still see the quality of the build is not that far forward. It's not like they're using high-tech materials or something. It's still very basic. So the square meter, which isn't really an issue. So you sit and look and go, was that worth it? Yeah. Wear a MAGA hat everywhere you go and see everybody's political opinion. You know what? I don't need to wear a MAGA hat, because quite simply, I don't give a damn what most people's political opinions are. The fact is, people are entitled to their opinions. That's it, full stop. But in the same way, you don't have to hear everybody's political opinions. See, there's too many people out there. I see it often in healthcare, education sectors, where the universities have encouraged that everybody says something. So they always go, in my opinion. Nobody asked for it. It's not needed. 9 times out of 10, it is not needed at all. Because, for example, you'll see it when they're trying to decide what colour the school colours are for a school. Everyone's got an opinion on what the colour should be. It's just these. They feel the need that they've got to feel important by discussing it. But in reality, if the school colour is green, the school colour is green. Yeah, obviously wound you up today. You obviously got a major issue. Maybe you need to go, what's that, Blue Sky? Is that the Twitter one? Maybe you need a safe space. No, just watch and see how America changes. But I'm sure you'll be one of those ones that wouldn't admit anything positive come out of it. Because they're also already getting that vibe from you. Rather than saying, I'll look into this, you're instantly, I've got this view on the world and that's all I've got. See, I looked at it from both perspectives. It's the same as when you look at the way the debating was going. The whole Democratic thing seemed to be more focused on hate, while Trump was busy making mockeries of stuff. He actually avoided getting into the negative politics stuff early on, and he just drove it and drove it and drove it. And as things have developed, he obviously got bans. He got JFK Jr. and others. to pick up those bits, while he just carried on with the stuff about the Haitians and things like that. And then even that was people trying to make an issue out of something. Made a musical piece on it, and then it backfired. So yeah, it's fine. If you don't like him, it's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. It's fine. I don't need to wear a MAGA hat though. I'm not American for a start. I was just interested, quite simply because it'll have a ripple effect on Europe and the UK. I do think you'll see some changes. Well, do you think stacking the Supreme Court with Christian fundamentalists is a positive for American society? Do you think people having a religious belief that is built on morals and a foundation of society is beneficial? Just wait and see what happens. Don't worry about it. It can't be any worse than what you've got. Let's face it. You just got to give it time. Like I said, the UK has got major issues, but the whole thing I'm looking at is, am I sitting whining about Starmer too much? Not really. Because quite simply, I don't see he's got any longevity in him. I don't see the whole fact that we're talking about projects they funded that aren't going to come to fruition. Art Park and Garden, don't worry about it. Famous last words. Compared to what? What, you're going to run for government? You're going to sit there at home getting all stressed about it? You're wasting your time. There's better things out there. You're not going to change it. You're not going to make any difference. You make no impact. Even if you want to run for government, you've got to wait 4 years. Along with actually looking at raising enough money and people to actually support you. And if you ain't doing that, I wouldn't worry about it. Reality is, America's in the bad space, and a lot of these other places are in a bad space. Yeah, as I say, I don't worry about it. I'm looking at it from the perspective is that there's going to be a lot of shifts in the West that are impacted by the shifts that have happened in the US. As simple as that, because I think a lot of the funding for things that are going on in Ireland and stuff is coming out of the US, a lot of the political stuff. So I do suspect if the funding starts to get cut, they may have some positive impacts in places. Because if you look at how a lot of these places have been ground down, I do think it's beneficial that changes have to happen. Whether they're painful changes or not, we're still going to have changes. Change is good. So that's my view on it. Yeah, like I said, not too concerned about it. It's not like we're going back to the Spanish Inquisition or something like that. The reality is, I think you've ended up with more of a democratic environment than you've had for a long time. The UK hasn't got one. It's got a lot of career politicians that are only concerned about themselves, so it's all about the status quo. It's all about keeping it the same. But that's life, you know. The only ripple effects we can get is the effects of any tariffs or stuff that can impact any exports from the UK to US. In the same way, I think Japanese cars are going to get hit. But I think even in the UK, in the EU, don't the Japanese get? They're not billed for tariffs. I don't think they pay any extra tariffs compared to, I don't know, say Volkswagen that's made in Europe. It doesn't mean I'm anti-Japanese. My car's a Toyota. Just means that some of this stuff is obviously being swayed for other reasons. So just see where it goes. It's too early in the day to worry about it. But I do expect there'll be some positive changes. Because if it swings more back to a lot of the traditional stuff, I think that's beneficial overall. I think one of the problems for me, looking at the way things have been pulled out, removing Christmas, it's a winter festival, oh, but we'll have a Diwali, we'll have a Ramadan, we'll have an Eid, but, it's bad to have a Christmas. I think these things need to be sort of reset. It's either everybody's equal or we're not equal. Simple as that. And a lot of the stuff that we're facing in the West, not just US, not just UK, is that's been eroded. That's been hammered in so many ways. It's like the DEI stuff. It should be if the person is the best fit, is the person the best for that role. About merit. Not everybody gets a certificate because not everybody gets a job. And if somebody's better qualified, smarter, and better suited to the role, and simply not getting it because they don't fit the DEI, that's just wrong. So there's many things that have influenced the change, and I think if you just give it 6 months, you'll see where it goes. I mean, like I said, with Boris Johnson, I don't rate him in any sense after his term or during his term, but I gave him his first 6 months, and he was pretty much what was expected. I do think the Labour side, far weaker, but I do think Boris Johnson self-serving, full stop. But that's the way a lot of them are. But I think even if you look at Boris Johnson, was he at Oxford, and how he got, I think was it, he got voted in for something, and he just promised them all whatever they wanted to hear, so they got the votes, and that's how he got elected, and that's how he understood how the system works. You just promise stuff, you don't follow through on it, and that's what we got now with the Labour. The Labour government has gone against the majority of its own voters. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's paid off his unions or whatever, but even that vote, as usual, you'll find they'll be protesting next year or next few months because they want pay rises again. That's just the nature of the beast in the UK. They're always protesting for more money. But the weird thing is, the economy is not improving in the UK. Raising the minimum wage while at the same time possibly causes inflation, because let's face it, if you're looking at a lot of people in low skilled jobs, the costs are then passed on to the consumer, which means the inflation, like, I don't know, getting your Uber Eats delivery goes up by 20 pence. Instantly, it causes inflation, which means it hasn't improved anybody. It just means everybody's poorer, because that 20 pence is no longer worth 20 pence, it's worth 15 or 10. Because I noticed it even here in Spain the other day. I look at an advent calendar for kids, it's nearly €10. You used to get them like in the pound shop in the UK. Nearly €10 an Aldi, and I'm thinking, that's gone up massively. And that's just something very simple, but that's going across the board. When they talk about inflation at 2% and whatever, it's not 2%. I estimate in the last couple of years, my costs have gone up by 25%. I'll part and go, yeah, way mega. Run. Yeah, see ya. But anyway, guys, I'm going to cut it off because been on for a while now. Yeah, it's funny how people instantly try and box you into one thing or the other. But this was if you watched me previously when I talk about the governments, you can't just have left and right. You've got what seems to be far left now, and then you've got your Rob Schneiders, your Elon Musks, your JFK Jr., which they all sat in that camp on the Democratic side. The fact is, they've moved the pivot too far to an extreme that people that are normally in their camp have just stayed where they were, while the rest of the camps moved further and further to an extreme. They go, now you're right. That's just madness. That's where your viewpoint is only fixated on yourself. That's when you get these people that are ranting on TikTok about I'm going to shave my hair and not date men and all this sort of stuff. Nobody cares. And then you look at it in a more larger perspective. A lot of these women were never dating men in the first place. They were already single. So what was the point? It's a protest of zero interest and zero merit and zero output and zero benefit. But am I right? No, I'm more libertarian than anything else. I'm not anti-big government. I don't believe in government controlling everything. I think a free market would be better for most people. I think when I look at some of the stuff I experienced in the Philippines, although the Philippines as a country is fairly wealthy, the reality is the biggest problem is corruption. There's enough resources for the Philippines to be rich. It's the corruption that's the problem. You got governments that control every aspect. I know some families that control every part of a province. You got one person's tied with the church, another one's the mayor, another one controls the police. All related. These are the things that keep people poor. And when you look at the realities, big governments is something we don't need. Most of our problems come from the government, let's face it. Most people will mind their own business and go through life just focused on enjoying life and getting on with day-to-day life. Most of our problems and interferences come from government. I look at the cost of a car and I wonder how much tax has gone on to cars in recent years in this obsession with green energy without actually producing any green solutions. Telling everyone to go electric while at the same time lacking the infrastructure, lacking green energy producing plants, etc. While telling everybody to go and buy a Tesla, which is ridiculously overpriced. It's just the madness of the world. I look at it from, you go back to say 70s, 80s, we had milk floats. So you get your milk float daily, you get fresh milk to your door, they do your bread, they do your eggs, they do a lot of your daily produce, and that stuff gets wiped out. You look at the plastic bag pushed in by legislation to replace the paper bag because all the trees were being cut down. Everything is forced. If you start balancing stuff based on cost, etc., things will find a natural level. So for example, you still need to produce plastic bags, but at the same time other people can produce paper bags cheaper or more efficiently or whatever, and you end up with a blend. If a government gets involved, it seems to push everything one way, so it will overproduce on one thing while blocking other stuff. So you end up with weird things that, like now, we've got too much plastic in the oceans. We've got too many plastic products, simple as that. Because the solution was plastic originally. So everybody invested in plastic, and now it's a problem. Everyone's investing in electric cars. They'll become a problem when the batteries start depreciating. People start wondering about buying an electric car because, like your mobile phone, don't want a second-hand mobile phone. Okay, Billy, is Cebu a good place to settle down? I've got to admit, Cebu City is a lot busier than when I was there. When I went back, I couldn't believe that it took me 3 times longer because of the traffic. But it depends on what type of lifestyle you want. Yeah, I would start in Cebu City if you're moving to the Philippines. The reason is, firstly, there's a lot of foreigners there, so you won't feel alienated when you first go there. But also, it's in central Visayas, so it's in a region with lots of islands. You're not far from Bohol. You can go head to the south and go to Negros. You could go out to Pilar. There's a lot of islands around you. So I would set a base up in Cebu, then travel around. Which is the best part of Cebu? Single shopping malls. I want to be walking distance to amenities. There's multiple malls in Cebu. If you want slightly out of Cebu city, where you're not right in the downtown, I'd have a look at the seaside, which is the SM seaside, and look at that development. That's something that has been developing over time, because I think that South Road proper, which is like the coast road, that was in sort of dispute since I think the late 70s, early 80s. I think everybody wanted their money before it would get developed. But there's a big shopping centre there, and there's properties developed around it. If you want to be in Cebu City itself, then the Ayala one's quite good, because there's a lot of security there. They keep the gardens and that clean. The property, a lot of high rises around it, and it's all walking distance to the mall. But also, it's a bit further north than SM seaside, which means it's nearer to Mactan Airport if you want to go in and out the country, and Lapu-Lapu. So those were the two main ones. I mean, if anybody else got suggestions, please put them up. But I think if you were, for me, SM Seaside would be more my sort of place, because it's the SRP, South Road proper road, has got straight access to the south. So it's a quick road to head down to Naga, Car, and going that way. Where when you're at the Yayala one, it's more central. So you got things like the Waterfront Hotel isn't far from there, which has got some nice restaurants there. Then there's Banilad, which has got some good restaurants. But you've got access to the airport easily. You've got access to go north easily. Mate lives in Mactan, also thinking CBIT. Yeah, CBIT is quite a small development. The waterfront's literally at their gates. It's not far from there at all. Yeah, I mean, CBIT is quite a nice place, and the good thing about that, because it's an IT centre, there's a lot of little restaurants and stuff there, so there's amenities there. Cebu's easy to get around with taxis and stuff anyway, so commuting wise, it's not really an issue. Yeah, I mean, I used to go to the IT park quite regular, to be fair. But yeah, IT park is a good, although it's quite small. If you go to the ones with the bigger malls, you've got the malls on your doorstep. Where the IT place, there isn't that. I find there's probably about 20 restaurants and small amenities, where the malls have got a massive amount of stuff on their doorstep. All depends what you want, you know. Yeah, jeepney is the easiest and cheapest. Yeah, I like going around on the jeepneys. I mean, I've got a motorbike in the Philippines, so I spend most of the time on that. But I like going on the jeepneys because they're quite. Well, most people are quite friendly, so good to meet a lot of people. But also, like you say, jumping from one to another, it's not difficult to get across town. The only thing is you've got to watch when it's raining. Raining, everything just goes chaotic. So that's the only time you've got to be on the ball, because suddenly all the jeepneys are full, all the taxis are full, everything just goes to chaos. But even then, I recommend going on the yellow taxis, which are the ones from the airport, if you catch one of those at the malls, because most people don't want to pay the extra because they're a higher premium. Do I have a plan to go back to Cebu, well, the Philippines? I've got to go back for a visit soon. I keep putting it off because things keep happening. So it's like my wife and the kids went back last year for a visit, so they spent a month there. But big problem I have is a lot of the companies I work with are normally needing me there. So having to, because going to the Philippines for me, I need about a month. So I may go back to consultancy. I'm still thinking about it at the minute, because that means I could probably just work 6 months of the year and make exactly the same amount of money as I make now, which means I do actually free up my time to go to the Philippines and other places. Because one of the issues I've had is I bought this place, so then obviously I've had to wait until I've got the mortgage hammered down, and then obviously recently I've just had to buy a new car, so that's another 17 grand, which I hadn't planned on spending. but but yeah, I'm going to go back for a visit at least soon. But it's normally something's come up, whether it's emergencies, medical emergencies for others, or like when we had the typhoon, had to sort some stuff out, had to give some people some emergency loans to sort themselves out, because they're sustainable, but got hit quite hard with the typhoon. So it just, I look at it this way. For me, it doesn't take me long to recover it, but it does put me off for a bit, financially, because I've got to wait for it to get paid back. Yeah, plan to rent and move around. You'll find plenty of places to rent anyway. So that's not a difficult one. It's just getting something on a short term. That'll be your initial thing, because a lot of people want a year, because a lot of them will try and get 2 months up front, for example, 2 months rent up front. But it all depends on what standard of living you want as well, because you can go from dirt cheap places to expensive places. I mean, if you look at a room at the Shangri-La or the waterfront, there can be some decent prices. But at the same time, if you look at pension houses, look at like Airbnbs even, you'll be able to find stuff at all sorts of levels. But you'll be able to get anything to fit your budget. That's what I liked about the Philippines, and this is why I'm more of a libertarian than anything else, because it's when you realise if you don't want to pay for rubbish collection, you don't want to pay for this, you don't have to have it. Where in the UK, you pay for, I'd say 70% of services that I'll never use. I mean, the basic one's healthcare. I've got private healthcare, yet I'm paying for the state's healthcare that I don't use. So yeah, my political views are more libertarian. It's more a case of I'm up for people being able to make their own decisions. They call me old-fashioned. I like people being responsible for themselves. But yeah, any questions though, Billy, please feel free. You can drop us an email at any time as well. So I thought I missed a question somewhere. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to leave it at that, because that's what's that, nearly an hour and a half. So that's a decent old chat. It was an interesting conversation about the MAGA stuff. Like I said, the interesting thing is I'm not pro-Trump either. I'm not anti-Trump, because the fact is I haven't seen what Trump's done yet. A lot of this stuff he did previously, I was busy with other stuff, so I didn't really see what was going on with the politics. But at the same time, it's the media shift I'm interested in at the minute. That's the bit I get, because the fact is, I find a lot of the people on the left are very aggressive and negative. But if that can help create a better environment for a lot of people by, say, their government funding getting cut off, that's a positive. Because for me, I look at my son, his friends, etc., and I look at how, particularly males, I'm not saying white males either, particularly males are being disenfranchised on purpose, as if they've done something wrong when they haven't. that really bothers me, because for me, I can, you know, I'm already 50. I can, I can ride out till I drop dead. But it's the next generations that bother me. When you look at the attacks on millennials and the other ones, and you got to look at it from the perspective of anything that a child has become comes from its parents and the stuff around it. And that's why you'll see me quite regularly attack the feminist movement and a lot of these problems that were caused in the education system from the 60s. And isn't it weird how a lot of the problems all seem to come around at the same time? Because you look at like the health issues, obesity, and everything else. They've all come along at the same time. So, what's linking these threads together? Because I can't see it as just it's all down to consumerism. It's too easy. It's too easy to have one fundamental thing. It's consumerism. Because you look at things like the Me Too movement, you look at the thing of where feminism started and where it's pushing. You look at the way things have gone to giving minority groups more rights than the majority. And then a lot of the stuff that's been brewing is because the majority, they've been disenfranchised, but also they're not being listened to. So why would you not expect it to shift the other way? That's why I think with Trump, what I'm seeing with Trump, the majority of stuff is not coming from Trump. It's going to be JFK Jr., it's going to be Elon Musk, it's going to be the people around him. I'm expecting Trump will only get engaged in things like the bigger stuff around being vocal. For example, the Ukraine war. I expect he'll be heavily involved in that because that's a difficult one to fix. But at the same time, the people around him are not in that arena. They have their specific parts and they already know what parts they're playing. That's what makes it interesting. But as I said before, most of those people would normally be Democrats that are sitting on his team. That shows you how far the the previous government, has gone that way. Way, way, way too far left. They've disconnected from its voters. It's disconnected from an honest reality. That's it. So I'm interested in seeing how that path pays out over the next 6 months, because I do think you're going to get shifts with Hungary, Poland, Netherlands, France, because of France's elections coming up. Canada's elections next year as well. So you got to look at it from a lot of the countries that have had some pretty bad things happen to them in recent years have got similar problems. And you've got to wonder, how did all these same types of people get in all these countries at the same time? And it all sounds conspiracy theories, but it's more a case of how. What's the logic behind this? I don't have the answers for it, but there does seem to be some patterns in there that concern the path that we were on. And I think if Trump locks that piece down, not because I'm pro-Trump, my view is, like I said, I'm more libertarian, I'm more traditional. There's like somebody talking about Christian fundamentalists. Well, I'll be honest with you, my basic view on life is having ethics, morals, and standards. So the fact is, if that injects some standards, that's a positive. If it goes down the same route of child abuse and stuff that the church and that's famous for, then it's not a good thing. So, but like I said, you've got to give everything 6 months. We don't control this stuff. We don't own it. We just see it. We're just often just the viewers of it. We're not amongst it. Our opinions don't matter. The main thing for me is I don't want people becoming disenfranchised and hating and on a bad path, because the whole point of this is some of this does seem very positive. At the same time, like I said, when I look at my son, I look at his friends, I'm more concerned that they have some moral guidance. I'm more concerned that they have a future. I don't want to hear all this feminist crap that's trying to splinter them away and toxic masculinity. There's only masculinity. There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. It's just nonsense. Just because people don't agree with you doesn't mean they're toxic, doesn't mean they're fascist, doesn't mean they're racist, misogyny or anything else. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. The question is, do you want to listen to the opinion? That's it. It's the same as I meet some people sometimes where they're so far that way, and it doesn't even need to be about this type of stuff. It's just that they could be a true socialist, for example. So their view is more that everyone's equal and everything else, yet at the same time will have a narrow window of opinion. So when you try and expand it out, oh, PB Hunters, hi Matt, I've been looking forward to uploading, going live. How's it going? Yeah, sorry, I haven't been doing much lately because I keep doing videos and then I cancel them, I delete them because I've got a lot of stuff going on at the minute, and not in a mental way. it's just, for example, I was taking a job in Saudi Arabia, but I've had to think about it for the last few days, and I'm going to turn it down, which took a bit of thinking. The money's good, the role's good, it's very big projects, but this gets back to my son. Looking forward to you uploading. Yeah, so yeah, I guess that. Because I'm looking at it from my kids. Because I can go to Saudi Arabia, be tax-free, earning 140, 150% of what I earn in the UK. So which isn't really 150%. With the tax-free piece, it's 200%. So I'm more than doubling what my income would be. But I will be away from the family. So I'm going to take a bit of a salary sacrifice and remain in the UK. That can be problematic because of the political climate. I do find a lot of people seem frustrated and annoyed all the time. So it's actually finding ways to deal with those situations more, which is it's an awkward bit. I mean, I'm tempted to move away from Northampton because I do find Northampton is a bit grim. I think it's got a lot of drug problems and things there, a lot of HMOs. I mean, I can't sort of gripe on that too much, because I'm in a HMO as well. Because to be fair, if I took on a flat or something, I'd probably say it's not worth even coming to the UK, I might as well work in Spain. But yeah, that's why I haven't done much lately, because I was waiting for the politics to sort of level off, to try and understand where things are going. I mean, Netflix pivot into sports, I think it's going to, that'll be a good move for their business if that's where they're going to go, because it may be dropping out of a lot of its politics, which would be nice to watch a TV show without having to work out who's the gay, who's the lesbian, or whatever. It's just wedged in there all the time, and it's just like, it's boring. It's almost like whoever writes something, they take any story and go, right, who are we going to make the gay character? Wheel of Fortune. It's now, oh, it's you anti this, and no, you just don't need to force things into people's viewpoints all the time. People know what gay people are. People may be gay that you know, but bizarrely, you don't need them in every book. Well, lucky enough, not in every book, and I don't mean in that negative way. I mean, I want to read the book about the book, not about political agendas. Political agendas. So it's nice that's for me. I think that's one of the pivotal things with the US at the minute, because I think some of the money's going to be cut off with some of these groups that have been pushing this. Stephen Birth, good morning, Matt. Glad you're well, mate. Yeah, all sound, mate. It's good to be back in Spain. We had some serious storms over in Spain, but I'm not going to gripe too much. I did video La Mata because we were in Torrevieja, and there was like thunder and lightning and stuff. But when you look at Valencia and Malaga, that's had some serious storms. And the weird thing is, they're talking about it as if it's getting worse. I don't think it is, because I think they've already had some severe storms and stuff previously. Because I think with Valencia, I think they diverted the river historically a long time ago. So there's been changes that have occurred. It's the same as a lot of this land here in La Mata, well, behind La Mata. I think La Marina and many other places. If you look at Roman times, this was all underwater. So you've got to bear in mind, there's been a lot of changes in this country as well as others. And then people go, oh, it's always flooding there. And it's like, yeah, it used to be a river. Yeah, so a lot of these things could be preventable, but they may also only happen once every 50 years or something, and they don't put the infrastructure in to avoid it for whatever reason. But anyway, I'm just glad that what I liked about this stuff is how the people come together to go and help each other. Don't get me wrong, there's some serious protests going on as well, but how people sort of rally together, because even here there's a lot of collections for not just for the people but also for animals, because a lot of the animal shelters got hit quite hard. But I've got to admit, this area, I think there must be some of the best animal lovers on the planet, because they do seem to love animals here a lot. That's when the charity stuff comes up. I won't do any animal ones because there's enough people that love the animals. I'll do stuff for kids, and I'll do stuff for like before we donated a load of stuff for the Ukrainian kids coming in from Ukraine. A lot of like milk and essentials for the school, because obviously they had to take on a load of kids that were coming in. Because the thing is, you don't know what they're coming with. I mean, I've got to admit, most of the Ukrainians I've met all seem to be, what would be the word? They all seem to be pretty cashed up. They don't seem short cash. I mean, most of the guys we know are all mariners as well, so they work on the ships. So they've come here, moved their families here, and then gone back to work. So there's been a lot of positive stuff, in the sense of people helping each other out. I think this community here, because it's so naturally diverse, there's no hang-ups here. Nobody cares where you're from, who you are, whatever. You're just part of the community. I mean, you can go and sit on the plaza and you'll hear French, you'll hear Dutch, German, Swedish, English, Spanish. Just off the top of my head, there's 6 languages just by sitting there with the people in the area. There is no hang-ups with people here. Everyone's just in the moment, just enjoying life, not bothering anybody, not being bothered. But I do think there does need to be more around supporting the teens a bit. I mean, to be fair, this area does have a lot of sports facilities. We were talking earlier about the new sports complex here, but La Mata's, Torrevieja's got a lot of sports facilities available on the doorstep. But at the same time, most of the jobs in the area will be orientated around the tourism industry, which means there isn't a lot of bigger jobs for the teenagers. No, I don't think there's any big factories around here either. So it's not as if, I don't know, there's a baked bean factory everybody works at or something. I don't see any of that. I mean, maybe up at Elche because they've got shoe manufacturing and stuff, but does seem there's a lot of smaller businesses and stuff, which is nice. But when you speak to some of the guys like the Lamata Sports Shop, he does it because it keeps him busy. He's got his pension. It's not. I don't think he really makes that much money, but he likes just having the business. Um, yeah, Stephen, it's great how everyone has come together that way there. I bet you're glad to be back home in a good community. Yeah, I mean, I've got to see this is why I think I find the UK difficult in some spaces. Um, but it may be I need to move further out into the smaller communities again, because it may be because I'm in the bigger cities and they're normally run down, and people are money focused. Because let's face it, the cost of rents in the UK is just stupid. It's stupidly overinflated because the whole market's inflated. If the bubble had burst on housing, I think the reality is rents would have been cheaper now. The cost of living would have deflated, and we may have had a better space. But then you look at how everything's just gone up and up and up. There seems to be every excuse to keep adding to people's bills. I mean, even because of this influx of people coming in on the boats, etc., even hotels are inflated because hotels base themselves on occupancy. So if you go to a hotel that's empty, a room may be £120, but if it's nearly at full capacity, the same room's £300. So if you imagine you've got millions of people that have come in, filling up the hotels. The reality is everywhere's full. Everything's a premium. So you pay a premium tax, and then when you're working away, you're paying a premium for your accommodation, so other people can live there for free. Absolute mental. But yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be in the community. I mean, even the Lamata Facebook group, I think, what's it, 34,000 members now? Because there's been a couple of people complain about how many people are in Lamata because there's more than the population of the town. But I think people forget there's a lot of tourists that come every year. There's a lot of people that are from here, used to live here, interested in the area, want to come here on holiday. So there's a lot of people that discuss things in there. So yeah, I've got to admit I like it here. I mean, I'm still wanting to buy a farm, but farm or a village, because I've got to gauge how far inland we go. Because my budget will be fairly tight when I do it, and the further inland I go, the cheaper the land is. But we'll see once I get to that point, because I've got other things I've got to line up. Like I said, I was going to take a job at Saudi, but I'm going to send them an email today saying I'm not taking that. But there's some other options on the table, so we'll see where we go next with that. But yeah, I think getting a village would be good, because I think there's a few. Well, I already know a few people says I'll buy a house, because obviously I can buy, like, say, a small village with, like, say, 16, 20 houses. And there's already a few people that said they'll buy a property in the village. So it wouldn't take long to recoup the cost of the village and then reinvest in the village. Because ideally, I would want to get to a point where we're producing our own electricity as much as possible, and try and be sustainable, not because of the actual energy costs, although it would actually make sense, but because it's very likely to be more remote. So the better the infrastructure you have, and then you get a bad winter, you can survive there quite easily. So I'm still looking at that. I'm still thinking about it, because that's going to be a massive commitment. So if I do that, that's going to lock me into I say retire. I don't think I'll ever retire, but it'd have to be something I can make it into like a sustainable nomad type village. But I want to bring in retirement properties as well, so it's all self-supporting. Because let's face it, if you're retired and you move there and the cost of living is fairly cheap, you're probably going to stay there till you pop your clogs. But also being an environment where it's a community that's developed around retirement housing as well as having a traditional village. So you've got two different sort of communities within one. I suppose it's a bit like the Matter. You've got the people that were originally here. You know, if you speak to some of the older guys and girls, they remember this when it was like, I think the population was 300 people or something. It was an old fishing village. So a lot of them own their businesses. They've been there a long time. Stephen Birth, it's a great page, the Matter page. Join it. Some good info in there. Have to nip out, but catch you later. Yeah, take it easy, mate. Enjoy the day. But yeah, I mean, from a Spanish living in Spain point of view, I do find it far more relaxing here. I think there's a lot less tension in things. I find people are generally a lot more, was it forgiving? They definitely seem less irritated than I find in the UK. People just seem to be more chilled out in general here. But bear in mind, I live in a town that is predominantly tourism and retirement. So it's people that are chilled out. There doesn't seem to be anything that, you know, when people are talking in the group, for example, they're not complaining about crime, they're not complaining about drugs, they're not complaining about violence or the stuff you would get, like where I'm in Northampton. There's a lot of stuff goes on there all the time. I'm not going down that negative path, but what you get here is the conversations are about when's the boardwalk opening, there's too much dog poo, when's the sports complex opening, when's the new Aldi. It's all just small community stuff, which I like. What I want to try and encourage more though is more the community group stuff where, because there's a walking group, but Torrevieja's got a photography club, and then there's a lot of people with photography interests. You have a drone club, all these other bits and pieces. I want to try and develop some of those stuff. Not that I'll run them, don't get me wrong, I don't want to run them. But try and promote people that are trying to develop their own groups, because for me, I think these are the bits that we could do with developing more in a lot of communities, because it brings people together that, you know, an accountant and cleaner, doesn't matter what your job role is, if you've got a shared interest, whether it's pottery, photography, I don't know, just going brambling, walking, hiking, I think it's good. I think it's good. Also, if you want to learn Spanish, being part of these types of communities, you'll meet a lot of people that will help you learn Spanish free of charge. Because let's face it, sitting in front of a screen, talking to either AI or talking to Duolingo or Memorize or Rosetta Stone is very one-dimensional. When you speak to Spanish people, they do not talk in the same structure length, because they will, everything gets shortened. I find everything gets shortened. There's an assumption you know what people are talking about, so they may drop the two meaning you or yo meaning I, and it'll become tango or whatever, because the tango with the O on the end defines who they're talking about. so it does become, when you're speaking, it is not like you will often find the structure, but it's the same when you learn English. A lot of the structure that people learn English with is not how many people speak, because it's grammatically correct. It's academic English. It's structured in that way. But it's just, I mean, even a simple one is like, you may go coffee and just point at somebody with a coffee. You don't need to go, do you want a coffee? they've just took all that. That's all out of the sentence. It's just coffee. That's it. It's the tone. But often you only get that sort of stuff in real situations. So getting in other groups and getting involved with other people, you will learn a lot and just be enjoying it. Because even your mistakes, it becomes funny. You know, what did I say the other day? We were at a restaurant and they asked me how I was going to pay. Um, I think I said cajeta, which I think that's the wallet. So the instinct corrects you, but at the same time, I don't mind being wrong. I mean, that's one of the things if you're trying to learn the language is get over being wrong because people will correct you, and that's part of it. When a small child is learning to talk, they're corrected a million times, but the child is not offended, upset about it. It's part of that learning experience. And I think this is, when people talk about why they struggle to learn a new language, a lot of it is, I think, the anxiety and stress. Well, I wouldn't call it stress, embarrassment maybe, of getting it wrong. But the fact is, you're learning a new language. You're supposed to get it wrong. If you were fluent in a language, why would you be learning it? So it's just getting over that bit of going, well, of course it's wrong because I'm trying to learn the language. Teach me. Anyway, guys, I was going to finish this about an hour ago, so been nice chatting. Everyone have a great weekend, or what's left of it. But it's been good speaking to you guys. And if you ever want me to talk about anything specific as well, just put it in the comments. Because I'm happy to engage about most things, to be fair. Mert Top CU Turkey. Yeah, I mean Turkey. Do you know what? There's some out of Turkey. Have a look at their modular housing, their prefabricated housing structures. They're stupidly cheap. I want to go out to Turkey and have a look at them. We were looking at modular structures for accommodation previously for other projects relating to prisons because during the pandemic there was a problem around the accommodation because of trying to create space for the prisoners, because obviously during the pandemic, I know myself from surveying prisons, some of these places are pretty grim, but a tiny cell, they were having like 2 people in and they were trying to get 3 people in. And then the pandemic happened, then suddenly you need 3 times the space. So we were looking at port cabins for that, and there was a lot of construction jobs around port cabins for accommodation for prisoners. Let's have a PB Hunters. When's the next live going to be, Matt? Do you know what? I'm going to start structuring these. I'll probably do them on a Sunday because if I try and do them during the week, something always happens. So what I might do is let's try and do them at 10 a.m. on a Sunday, Spanish time. Yeah, 10 a.m. on a Sunday, because I think that's because I'm in the UK. It's 9 a.m. and I can do it at 9 a.m. in the UK, and I'll use the tablet a bit more, to be fair. Because when I start doing stuff, what I call properly, I get too busy, so then I just don't do it. Because it's like the drone. Bought the drone, haven't had enough time to use it, but I've been learning how to use it. Just haven't got enough time to use it. So it's like today. It's not that windy. I might go down onto the boulevard today and take the little drone out. Because this one's quite cool, to be fair. Because it will follow you around. So, if I go down on the boardwalk, let's see what it's set up on. What's that?
Droney, circle, rocket, spotlight, direction track, follow.
Yeah, so I mean it's quite an easy one where you just hold the button.
Medium, follow, 3, 2,
And then,
unable to take off, aircraft in motion.
Try again.
Medium, follow, 3,
So you don't really need to do much with it, because once it's up and running, it will follow me around the room, for example. So I'm going to take him out today, as if it's a person, just to give him a test run, because I bought it and I've used it up at the park in Northampton. That's been about it, but need to do a bit more with it. Need to put a bit of use into it. But yeah, got to put a bit more effort. I did some videos in the car as well, but I ended up deleting them because I wasn't happy with it. So this is the problem. I probably produce about 1 in 10. There's a lot of stuff I do and I just not happy, so I just delete it. I should actually start editing stuff rather than just scrapping it. But right now, I think the politics stuff we've talked about, for me, like I said, I've got a lot I want to focus on with the teenage guys. Not too fussed on the girl side, 'cause I think they're getting all that girl power stuff. So I'm not too fussed on the females, unless some girls and women tell me differently. But it's a bit like the Andrew Tate stuff. I think he's got some positive stuff for the guys, but I think he's got a lot of negative stuff in there as well. I think, you know, promoting health, promoting personal well-being, promoting personal development, getting a deeper understanding of things like being stoic but not submissive. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, Mr. In Between. I actually like that guy's mentality on that show, because his mentality is so in your face without being in your face, because he doesn't have a lot of expressions. You don't see much anger on his face, but then he's quite happy to assassinate people or whatever without even thinking about it. But I like him as a character because he does have a deeper thought to how we ended up in that situation in the first place. So, you know, getting bullied at school, then beating up the guy that bullied him, etc., etc. I think some of that is where you get the deeper position of defending yourself at all costs. But at the same time, one of the key things in life is what's the output. Because your boss may be an ass, but telling them an ass and you still need the job may not be the most beneficial thing to you to say. It's how do you work things in an environment that is often going against you, and I think it is for a lot of guys, especially if you're younger. I know when I was probably I was 17, because I already understood a lot on electronics. My father's from an electronic background, and I was doing fire and security alarm installs when I was young. And the engineers I worked with didn't like the fact that I understood it, and they created issues with the company I was working with. But the same guys later on had to apply for jobs with me, because, to be fair, electronics is something I used to live and breathe. But the thing is, I can understand that right down to a circuit level, because that's what I learned from my father, etc. So all the, like now where people hot swap stuff out, they just get rid of it, scrap it, get another one. A lot of the time I can actually fix it or get past it or find another solution to it, because I was brought up in an environment where you developed the technology, or you fixed it, or you problem solved, or you even looking for like dry joints on circuit boards, or change a chip, did all this stuff. In today's world, we just throw it away. And I sit there and go, well, this was looking at Raspberry Pis originally, because the Raspberry Pi was at £5. Yet, if you're looking at sensor controls or a module for a building management system, probably £200, £250 each. And you're looking, well, hang on, what's the difference between that and that? Because when you open them up, there ain't a lot of difference. Well, what I mean is, the Raspberry Pi's got more intelligence in it. But anyway, well, that's why I think it's important. For me, I think I remember when I was younger, I got given a guy that could drive that didn't know how to install alarm systems because he was cheap and I was still on my apprenticeship. And I was doing the installs and teaching that guy. And then I left for another company, but we still kept in touch for like 20 odd years. But I find the society we're in at the moment seems to be more fixated on things like DEI and creating issues that aren't there. So, for example, there may be a fixation on, I don't know, Ramadan, Eid or something in the UK, but at the same time going, oh, we're cancelling the Christmas party because the Christmas fair because of a risk of an act of terrorism. Okay, I don't agree with that. It's the same as when you look at the parades that have reduced for Remembrance Sunday. On Armistice Day, I was at the town hall in Torrevieja with the for the remembrance, and you got the anti-Palestine lot blasting music out there, and you're just thinking, why would I want to engage or listen to a word you have to say when you cannot even respect the dead? That's why I didn't gripe about it, didn't say anything. I just thought, most of these people that want their issue and they're only interested in their issue being highlighted and it's the only thing they care about, is ignore them. I have nothing to do with them. For me, I think it's important that we embrace that we need to try and promote and help the next generations in a positive way. There's no point writing off people going, oh, yeah, the guy should go out dating, he shouldn't sit in the basement, he shouldn't live with his parents, he shouldn't do that, he should be a man, he should be this, blah, 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 blah. And you go, right, the ratio for car ownership, the ratio for property ownership is probably tenfold of what it was when their parents were similar age. The cost of living has shot up for a lot of these people. Don't put the blame on the kids. The environment around them is far more difficult for them than it was for you. For me, being a Gen X, we didn't do emotion. Parents didn't tell us they loved us and all that sort of stuff. Did it make me a worse person? The answer is no. But at the same time, I recognise a lot of people, because of the way society's changed, it's putting a lot of pressure on people to be more emotional and be this and whatever. And it's often not a guy's environment, because women are more emotional, but they just are. There's nothing wrong with guys being able to just be guys, and this is the bit we need in society. We need that bit that says it's okay to be you. It's okay to like football, like boxing, like this. It's not toxic at all. It's actually just part of being a human being and being a male human being. I mean, it's nothing wrong with a female liking boxing either. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But when people are saying it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, they're the problem, not you. And I think this is part of what needs a shift at the moment, because I do think there's been a lot of bad stuff out there. You know, when people talk about name deading and all this sort of stuff that's come out with the transgender stuff and all that, I get that's their realms, they're part of what they want to be. But I'll be perfectly blunt with you, I'm not concerned with transgenders in the same way they should not be concerned about people like me. I respect they are who they are. I just don't need to hear about it. I'm not interested in it. It doesn't need to be a celebration. A celebration should be about something like being a human being on achieving something. Just because you've decided to go through a transgender change, that's for you. I get that's a big thing for you. But for me, couldn't care less. Not interested. And I think this is part of the shift, is to say, park that. If that's what you do, go and do that. But don't sit there and tell me that you want to explain in front of kids in schools the stuff that's been going on. I mean, everyone knows the stuff all over the media circuit of what some of this stuff's been like. It's not good. It's not good. It's not healthy. It's not beneficial to society. Yeah, let's see where we go. But anyway, guys, nice to see you. Have a great weekend.